An 11-year-old girl saw everyone ignore a confused old man on the street. When she looked in his eyes, she started trembling. They had the same lost look as her grandmother's. Sarah Johnson's backpack, straps dug into her shoulders as she walked down the cracked sidewalk of Mason Street. The afternoon sun hit the shop windows, making her squint. Her feet hurt in her slightly too small sneakers. She'd grown again, but her mom said they'd have to wait until next month for new ones. "Hey, Sarah." Mrs. Rodriguez called from her flower shop doorway. She held a wilting bouquet, headed for the trash. "Want these for your mom?" Sarah stopped, adjusting her pink backpack. "Thanks, Mrs. Rodriguez, but she's working double shifts again today. They just die in our apartment." The old flowers reminded her of the ones they'd picked for Grandma's funeral 3 months ago. Sarah's throat tightened. She swallowed hard and kept walking. The usual after-school crowd filled the sidewalk. Kids from Boston Public rushing to the bus stop, workers heading home early, elderly couples taking their slow afternoon walks. Sarah checked her phone. 3:47 p.m. Mom wouldn't be home until after midnight again. A shout cut through the street noise. "I told you yesterday, you can't hang around here." Sarah recognized Mr. Harrison's voice before she saw him. He stood in the doorway of Harrison's general store, his face red under his gray hair. He jabbed his finger toward someone sitting against the wall. "This is a business. You're scaring away my customers." Sarah's steps slowed. She'd seen Mr. Harrison yell at people before. Teenagers on skateboards, people asking for change, anyone he thought looked suspicious. Mom always said to keep walking, mind her own business. But something made her stop this time. The man Mr. Harrison was yelling at sat hunched against the storefront wall. His white beard was unkempt, his coat dirty. But it was his eyes that caught Sarah's attention, wide and confused, darting around like he couldn't quite focus on anything. Her hands started shaking. She knew that look. She'd seen it every day for the last year of Grandma's life, watching the sharp, loving woman who'd raised her slip away piece by piece. I need to," the old man mumbled, patting his pockets. "Martha said." "Martha has." "I don't care what Martha said." Mr. Harrison's voice got louder. "You need to move along." Sarah's feet moved before her brain caught up. 3 steps closer. The man's hands trembled as he kept searching his pockets. A car honked nearby, and he jumped, looking around wildly. For more steps. "Young lady, keep walking," Mr. Harrison snapped at her. "This isn't your business." Sarah's heart pounded. She remembered the last real conversation with her grandmother, 6 months before she died. They'd sat on the old floral couch, and for a moment, the fog had lifted from Grandma's eyes. "People forget, baby," Grandma had said, patting Sarah's hand. "They forget where they are, who they are, but they never forget how you make them feel. Remember that?" The next day, Grandma had called her Margaret, her sister's name, and the clarity never came back. Sarah took another step toward the confused man. Her mouth was dry. "Sir?" Her voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Sir, are you okay?" The old man looked up at her. His eyes were deep brown, bloodshot. A medical alert bracelet glinted on his wrist. "I need to find Martha," he said. His voice shook. She knows where." "I'm calling the police," Mr. Harrison announced, pulling out his phone. "This has gone on long enough." Sarah's chest felt tight. The same feeling she'd had watching the nurses wheel Grandma away that last time, knowing she'd never come home again. "Wait," she said, louder this time. She set her backpack down on the sidewalk. "Please just wait." The old man's hands wouldn't stop moving, checking his pockets over and over. Sarah noticed a small tear in his coat sleeve, carefully sewn up with neat stitches. Someone cared about him. Someone was probably looking for him right now, scared and worried, just like she and Mom had been every time Grandma wandered off. "Do you know where you are?" she asked gently, the way the nurses had taught them to talk to Grandma. He shook his head. "Martha. She works at the library." "I need to." "She's waiting." "Is Martha your wife? Or your daughter?" The question seemed to agitate him more. He tried to stand, but his legs wobbled. "Young lady," Mr. Harrison's voice had an edge of warning. "This is not your problem to solve. Move along before I call your mother." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. She thought about moving along, going home to their empty apartment, doing her homework, making microwave macaroni for dinner. The safe choice. The easy choice. She thought about Grandma, lost and scared in her own mind, and all the strangers who'd looked away. Sarah took a deep breath and knelt down next to the old man, keeping a careful distance like the nurses had taught her. "Sir, my name is Sarah. I want to help you find Martha. Can you tell me your name?" The man's weathered hands finally stilled. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. "Alfred," he said softly. "My name is Alfred." Behind them, Mr. Harrison started dialing his phone. Sarah heard the numbers being punched in. 9 to 1. She had seconds to decide. Walk away or stay. Run from the look in Alfred's eyes or face it, the way she couldn't with Grandma in those final months. The same eyes. The same lost, frightened eyes. Sarah Johnson, 11 years old, with worn-out sneakers and a too-heavy backpack, made her choice. She sat down on the sidewalk next to Alfred, folded her hands in her lap, and stayed. "That's it." Mr. Harrison's thumb hovered over the last one in 911. "I'm calling them right now." Sarah kept her eyes on Alfred, trying to stay calm like the nurses had taught her. "Mr. Alfred, can I look at your bracelet? It might help us find Martha." Alfred's fingers wrapped around the metal band. "Martha gave me this. She said always wear it." "That's good." She was right. Sarah scooted closer, careful not to make any sudden movements. "May I see it?" The late afternoon sun caught the scratched surface of the medical alert bracelet as Alfred extended his arm. Sarah had to lean in to read the worn engraving. "Alfred Matthews. Alzheimer's/dementia. If found, please call." The phone number was partially rubbed away, only a few digits still visible. 911, Mr. Harrison announced loudly, making Alfred flinch. "Yes, I have a situation at Harrison's General Store on Mason Street. There's a homeless man refusing to leave my property, and now he's got a kid involved." Sarah's heart raced. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called her mom. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. "Baby, I'm at work. Is everything okay?" Her mom's voice was hushed, hospital sounds in the background. "Mom, there's a man here with Alzheimer's. Like Grandma. He's lost and scared, and Mr. Harrison's calling the police, and I don't know what to do, but I can't leave him alone." The words tumbled out in a rush. A pause. Sarah heard her mom's steady breathing, the squeak of hospital shoes on linoleum. "Where exactly are you?" "Outside Harrison's store. The man's name is Alfred Matthews. He keeps asking for Martha." "Sarah, listen carefully. I can't leave right now. We're short-staffed and I have critical patients." Her mom's voice was tight with worry. "But I want you to stay on the phone with me. Is Mr. Harrison still there?" "Yes. He's talking to the police." "Put me on speaker." Sarah's thumb hit the speaker button just as Mr. Harrison finished his call. "Mr. Harrison," her mom's voice rang clear from the phone. "This is Patricia Johnson, Sarah's mother. I'm a registered nurse at Boston General. The man you're dealing with has a medical condition." Harrison's face reddened. "Mrs. Johnson, with all due respect, your daughter needs to leave. This isn't safe. What's not safe is leaving a vulnerable person alone on the street. My daughter recognized the signs of his condition because her grandmother had the same one. Please, give them a few minutes while we figure this out." Other people had started gathering on the sidewalk. A couple stopped to stare. A teenager on a bike slowed down, phone out like he might start recording. "Go away!" Alfred suddenly shouted, making everyone jump. His hands started shaking again. "Martha! Martha! Where are you?" It's okay," Sarah said quickly, keeping her voice low and steady. "You're safe, Mr. Alfred. We're going to help you find Martha." Her mom's voice came through the phone. "Sarah, check if he has any other ID. Wallet, papers, anything in his pockets." "Mr. Alfred, can you check your pockets again? Maybe there's something that can help us find Martha." His trembling hands patted his coat pockets, then his pants. He pulled out a crumpled receipt, a rubber band, and finally, a battered leather wallet. "Good," Sarah encouraged. "Can I look at that?" He clutched the wallet tighter. "It's mine. I know it's yours. I just want to help find Martha. Remember Martha? She gave you that nice bracelet." The mention of Martha seemed to calm him. He slowly handed over the wallet. Sarah opened it carefully. A few dollar bills. An ancient library card. And there, behind a plastic window, a Massachusetts driver's license. "Mom, I found his license." Sarah read off the address. "It's on Cedar Avenue." A sharp intake of breath from her mom. "Baby, that's all the way across town. How did he get there?" The growing crowd of onlookers made Alfred more agitated. He started rocking back and forth, mumbling under his breath. "The police are on their way," Mr. Harrison announced. "They'll handle this." A woman in a business suit stopped to watch. "Should that girl be touching him? Seems dangerous." "Mind your own business," Sarah snapped, surprising herself with her anger. To Alfred, softer, "It's okay. You're doing great." Her mom's voice crackled through the phone. "Sarah, I'm going to try calling Cedar Avenue hospitals and care facilities. Keep him calm. If the police come, explain everything clearly. I'll call you right back." The call ended. Sarah felt very alone. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. The evening rush hour traffic was picking up, cars honking, more people gathering to stare. "Martha?" Alfred's voice quavered. "I need to go home now." "We're working on that," Sarah promised. Her throat felt tight. "Can you tell me about Martha? Is she your wife?" "My daughter," he said clearly. Then his face clouded again. She works at the library. I need to find her." Sarah checked her phone. No call back from Mom yet. Her stomach growled. Normally she'd be having her after-school snack now, watching TV in their quiet apartment. A police siren wailed in the distance. "They're coming to take me away," Alfred said, his voice rising in panic. "Like they took Eleanor." "They took Eleanor away." "Nobody's taking you anywhere," Sarah said firmly, even as her own heart raced. "I'm staying right here with you." The siren got closer. Mr. Harrison stood straighter, smoothing his shirt. Sarah thought about what the nurses had said when Grandma got agitated. Distraction is better than confrontation. "Mr. Alfred, what kind of books does Martha read?" "At the library?" He blinked at her. "Books?" "Yes, since she works at the library." "What's her favorite?" She likes the ones with gardens. Pretty pictures." His hands relaxed slightly. "She reads them to her boys." "My grandsons." "You have grandsons? What are their names?" "Tommy is 7. Luke is 5. A smile flickered across his weathered face. "They call me Pop Pop." The police siren cut off abruptly. A cruiser had pulled up to the curb. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from her mom. "Still calling places. Stall if you can. Don't let them take him without getting his info." 2 officers stepped out of the car. The small crowd parted to let them through. Sarah grabbed Alfred's hand. His skin was papery and cold. "It's okay," she whispered, not sure if she was reassuring him or herself. "I'm not going anywhere." The officers approached, hands on their belts. Mr. Harrison stepped forward to meet them. Sarah took a deep breath and squeezed Alfred's trembling hand. She thought of Grandma, how even at the end, when she didn't recognize anyone else, she'd still respond to a gentle touch. Sometimes love wasn't about grand gestures. Sometimes it was just about holding on. The police officer's boots scraped against the sidewalk as they approached. The taller one had gray hair at his temples. The shorter one looked young enough to be Sarah's older brother. "Evening, folks," the older officer said. His nameplate read Martinez. "What seems to be the situation here?" Mr. Harrison stepped forward quickly. "This man has been loitering outside my store, officer. I've asked him repeatedly to leave. He's disturbing my customers." Sarah felt Alfred's hand tighten around hers. The younger officer, Brooks on his nameplate, was staring at them. "Sir," Officer Brooks called to Alfred. "Can you stand up for me?" Alfred's breathing got faster. "Eleanor? Is Eleanor here?" "No, sir. I'm Officer Brooks with the Boston Police." "I need you to stand up." Sarah jumped in. "He has Alzheimer's. Please look at his medical bracelet." "My mom's a nurse. She's trying to find his family right now." Officer Martinez turned to her. "And who are you?" "Sarah Johnson. I was walking home from school when I saw him. He's lost and confused, just like my grandmother was before." She swallowed hard. "Please don't hurt him. He's scared." The sun had dipped below the buildings, leaving them in blue shadow. The evening air was getting cooler. More people had stopped to watch. Sarah counted at least 15 now, some with phones out. "Put those phones away." Officer Martinez barked at the crowd. To his partner, "Brooks, Run the name on his ID. Officer Brooks took the license Sarah held out. He walked back to the cruiser, speaking into his radio. Alfred started rocking again. Martha said, stay put if lost. Stay put. That's right, Sarah said quickly. You did exactly right, Mr. Alfred. Martha will be proud of you. Her phone buzzed. Mom. Sarah? I've called 6 facilities so far. No luck yet. How are things there? The police are here. They're running his ID. Put me on speaker again, baby. Sarah held up the phone. Her mom's voice came through clear and professional. Officers? This is Patricia Johnson, RN at Boston General. I want to thank you for responding. The gentleman you're dealing with has Alzheimer's disease. His name is Alfred Matthews. I'm currently trying to locate his family or care facility. Officer Martinez leaned toward the phone. Ma'am, we appreciate your involvement, but we need to get him off the street. We can take him to the station until no. Alfred tried to stand suddenly, stumbling. No station. Eleanor. Sarah steadied him. It's okay. No one's taking you anywhere. Officer Brooks jogged back from the cruiser. Sir, license comes back to a Cedar Avenue address. No warrants, no priors. Dispatch is calling the number listed, but no answer. The crowd had grown larger. Someone whispered, "Why don't they just arrest him?" Another voice, "That poor little girl." Sarah wasn't poor. She was angry. "He's not dangerous," she said loudly, looking at the crowd. "He's sick and lost and scared. My grandma was the same way. She'd get confused and walk out of the house. Sometimes she'd end up miles away. But people helped her. They always helped her get home. A few people looked away. Others lowered their phones. Martha." Alfred's voice was small. "I want to go home now." "I know." Sarah blinked back tears. "We're trying." Officer Martinez sighed heavily. "Look, we can't just leave him on the street. Protocol says dash. Then what's protocol for helping people?" Sarah demanded. The words burst out before she could stop them. "What's protocol for being kind?" A surprised murmur ran through the crowd. Mr. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. Sarah's mom spoke through the phone. "Officers, if you could give me just 30 more minutes. I'm still calling facilities. Taking him to the station will only increase his agitation." Officer Brooks touched his partner's arm. "Martinez, remember that case last month? The old lady from the nursing home. Different situation. Same condition, though." Brooks knelt down to Alfred's eye level. "Sir? Mr. Matthews? We're going to help you, okay? No one's in trouble here." Alfred's rocking slowed slightly. Sarah felt her shoulders relax, just a fraction. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Trying the hospitals now. Keep stalling." The street lights flickered on, casting harsh yellow circles on the sidewalk. The evening traffic was heavy now, cars crawling past. More people were stopping to watch. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Officers, I don't mean to be difficult, but this is affecting my business. People can't even get to the door because they're too busy gawking." Sarah snapped. Then softer, "Sorry. I'm sorry. But please, Mr. Harrison, just a little longer." Alfred's hand was cold in hers. He'd started humming quietly, something that might have been a lullaby. Officer Martinez checked his watch. 10 minutes. Then we have to move him. Sarah's mind raced. What would the nurses have done with Grandma? What would Mom do? "Mr. Alfred, tell me about Tommy and Luke again. Your grandsons?" His humming stopped. "Did they like trains?" "Big trains. We went to the train museum?" Sarah guessed. "Yes." His face lit up briefly. "Tommy knows all the kinds. Freight and passenger trains?" Yes. He patted his coat pocket again. "I have pictures. Martha gave me pictures." Sarah helped him search his pockets. Her fingers touched something square and stiff, a photograph, creased and worn. 3 smiling faces, a woman with Alfred's eyes, 2 small boys on her lap. "Is this Martha? And Tommy and Luke?" Alfred stared at the photo. His hand shook less. "My girls. My boys." Officer Brooks looked over Sarah's shoulder at the picture. Dispatch said no answer at the Cedar Avenue number. "But maybe." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "Martinez, look at this. There's a Martha Matthews listed as head librarian at the West Branch Library. Different address, but..." Sarah's phone rang. Her mom. "Baby, I think I found him." There's a memory care facility on Cedar Avenue. They reported a missing resident this afternoon. Alfred Matthews, 78 years old. His daughter's already been notified. She's been out searching. I'm conferencing her in now. A new voice burst through the phone. Dad? Is my dad there? This is Martha Matthews. Alfred's head snapped up. Martha. Sarah held the phone closer to him. It's your daughter, Mr. Alfred. Martha's on the phone. Daddy? Martha's voice broke. Daddy, stay right where you are. I'm coming to get you. Luke and Tommy are with me. We've been so worried. The boys. Alfred smiled, touching the photograph. They like trains? That's right, Daddy. They can't wait to see their pop. We're in the car now. Please stay with a nice girl. What's your name, sweetheart? Sarah Johnson. My mom's Patricia. She's the nurse who found you. Sarah. Martha's voice was thick with tears. Thank you. Thank you for staying with him. We're about 15 minutes away. Officer Martinez nodded slowly. We'll wait. The crowd began to thin as the drama wound down. Mr. Harrison disappeared into his store without another word. Sarah sat with Alfred in the gathering dark, still holding his hand. She told him about her own grandmother, about the puzzles they used to do together, about the songs she used to sing. He didn't always respond. Sometimes he asked for Martha again, or Eleanor, or hummed his broken lullaby. But he kept hold of her hand. The nurses had taught Sarah and her mom so many things about dealing with Grandma's condition. Medical terms, behavior management, safety protocols. But they never taught her the most important thing. Sometimes love looked like a girl in scuffed sneakers, sitting on a cold sidewalk, holding on tight to a stranger's hand. Sometimes love looked like waiting. Somewhere in the city, a siren wailed. Traffic lights changed from red to green to yellow and back again. People walked past, caught in their own stories. And Sarah Johnson waited with Alfred Matthews for his daughter to bring him home. A minivan's headlights swept across the storefront, illuminating Sarah and Alfred in harsh white light. The van pulled up behind the police cruiser, its tires crunching on loose gravel. Martha? Alfred straightened up, his hand tightening around Sarah's. The van side door slid open before the engine even shut off. Two boys tumbled out, their sneakers lighting up with each step. Pop, pop, they shouted in unison. A woman rushed around from the driver's side, tall, with Alfred's deep brown eyes and gray streaks in her dark hair. Daddy! Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, please wait, but Martha Matthews was already on her knees beside her father, tears streaming down her face. Daddy, we've been so worried. So worried. Alfred blinked at her. Martha? You were at the library. I'm here now, Daddy. Tommy and Luke are here too. The boys hung back, suddenly shy. The younger one, Luke, Sarah guessed, clutched a stuffed train engine. Sarah started to let go of Alfred's hand, but he gripped tighter. Sarah helps, he said to Martha. Like Eleanor helped. Fresh tears spilled down Martha's cheeks. Yes, Daddy. Just like Mom used to help. Sarah's phone buzzed. Her mom again. Baby, I got someone to cover the last hour of my shift. I'm on my way. Don't move. Officer Brooks pulled out his notebook. Ms. Matthews, we'll need to get some information. Of course, yes. Martha wiped her eyes. Tommy, Luke, come say hi to Pop. Carefully, remember what we talked about? The boys inched closer. Luke held out the stuffed train. I brought Blue Engine, Pop. He helps me when I'm scared. Alfred released Sarah's hand to take the toy. His fingers traced the fuzzy blue fabric. Trains, he said softly. Tommy knows all the kinds. The older boy puffed up with pride. Freight trains, passenger trains, steam engines, diesel engines. He rattled off facts while Luke curled up against Alfred's side. Officer Martinez spoke quietly with Martha while Brooks took notes. Sarah caught fragments. Found him wandering near Cedar Avenue. Security cameras showed him getting on a bus. Search for hours. Miss Johnson? Officer Brooks turned to her. We'll need a statement from you, too. Sarah straightened her back. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just lost and scared. No one's in trouble, Brooks assured her. But you did exactly right, recognizing his condition and getting help. That's important information for our report. Martha touched Sarah's arm. You recognized it because of your grandmother? Sarah nodded. She had Alzheimer's, too. She died 3 months ago. I'm so sorry. Martha's eyes filled again. How old are you, sweetheart? 11. 11, Martha repeated softly. Tommy's 7, Luke's 5. They help me watch Pop Pop sometimes. But it's getting harder. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Ms. Matthews, about the care facility dash, I know. Martha's voice cracked. I know it's not working. He hates it there. Keeps trying to go home. Our old house, or the library where I used to work. But I can't watch him all the time. I'm a single mom. I work 2 jobs. Sarah thought of her own mom, working double shifts at the hospital. The empty apartment. The 2 small sneakers they couldn't replace yet. A familiar car pulled up to the curb. Sarah's mom jumped out, still in her scrubs. Baby, are you okay? Mom? Sarah stood on shaky legs. She hadn't realized how long she'd been sitting on the cold concrete. Patricia Johnson hugged her daughter tight, then turned to Martha. Mrs. Matthews? I'm Patricia. We spoke on the phone. I'm so glad you found him. Found me? Alfred looked up, confused again. Eleanor? Is Eleanor coming? No, Daddy, Martha said gently. Remember? Mom's not. She's not here anymore. Alfred's face crumpled. Luke pressed closer to him, offering the blue train again. Sarah's mom knelt down beside them. Mr. Matthews? I'm a nurse. Would it be okay if I checked your hands? They look a bit cold. Her professional calm seemed to settle him. He let her take his pulse, check his fingers for circulation. Martha, Officer Martinez said, we need to discuss next steps. Protocol requires protocol. Sarah's mom looked up sharply. This man needs to be checked for dehydration and exposure. He's been wandering for hours. Standard procedure Martinez began. I know the procedures. Mom's voice was firm. I work with dementia patients every day. He needs medical attention first, paperwork second. Brooks nodded. We could escort them to Boston General's? No. Martha shook her head. Please. He gets so agitated in hospitals. Isn't there? I work the memory care floor, Sarah's mom said quietly. If you're willing to bring him to the ER, I can make sure he's seen quickly. Keep him calm. Sarah knows how to help too. Alfred was humming again, that same broken lullaby. Luke had started humming along, making up his own tune. Martha wiped fresh tears. You do that? After everything? I mean, your shift just ended. Of course she would, Sarah said. People helped Grandma. Now we help too. Officer Martinez holstered his notebook. We'll follow you to the hospital. Brooks, let dispatch know. Mr. Harrison emerged from his store, locking up for the night. He paused, keys jangling. Everything okay here? He asked gruffly. Sarah met his eyes. Yes, Mr. Harrison. Everything's okay now. He nodded once, then walked to his car without another word. Sarah? Alfred called. Sarah helps? Yes, Mr. Alfred. I'm still helping. We're all going to help. Tommy tugged his mother's sleeve. Can Sarah come with us? She knows about trains too. Martha looked at Patricia. Would that? I mean, if you're both heading to the hospital anyway. Baby? Mom squeezed Sarah's shoulder. Want to ride with them? I'll follow in our car. Sarah thought about homework waiting at home, about dinner, and her favorite TV show, and her warm bed. She thought about Grandma, about all the strangers who'd helped bring her home when she wandered. Yeah, she said. I'll ride with Mr. Alfred. They helped him stand, Martha on one side, Sarah on the other. His legs were shaky, but he managed the few steps to the van. The boys climbed in after him, Tommy still rattling off train facts, Luke still humming. Sarah settled into the back seat. Alfred reached for her hand again. The van pulled away from Harrison's general store, following the red and blue lights of the police cruiser. Sarah's mom's car brought up the rear, a small parade through the darkening city streets. Martha. Alfred's voice was drowsy now. Are we going home? Soon, Daddy. First, we're going to see some nice doctors. Sarah and her mom are coming too. Sarah helps, he mumbled, already half asleep. Like Eleanor helped. The city lights blurred past the windows. Tommy had fallen quiet, leaning against his grandfather. Luke was asleep, the blue train engine clutched to his chest. Martha caught Sarah's eye in the rearview mirror. Thank you, she mouthed silently. Sarah nodded, holding Alfred's weathered hand as the van wound its way through the Boston night. Some things didn't need words. The emergency room lights buzzed overhead, harsh and fluorescent. Sarah sat between Tommy and Luke in the waiting area while her mom talked to the intake nurse. Martha hadn't let go of Alfred's hand since they arrived. Look, Pop-Pop's got a bracelet just like yours. Luke pointed at the hospital ID band they'd put on Alfred's wrist. That's right, buddy. Martha's voice was hoarse. The doctors need to know his name, just like your train has its name. Luke held up his stuffed engine. Blue engine number 5. A young doctor approached, clipboard in hand. Mr. Matthews? I'm Dr. Chun. Let's get you checked out. Alfred's grip on Martha's hand tightened. Eleanor needs her medicine. It's okay, Daddy. The doctor just wants to make sure you're feeling good. Sarah watched her mom step in smoothly, the way she always did at work. Mr. Matthews, would you like Sarah to come too? She's been such a good helper today. Alfred nodded. Sarah helps? Is that okay? Martha asked Dr. Chun. Of course. Family support is important. He smiled at Sarah. I hear you're quite the expert at keeping people calm. Tommy bounced in his seat. Can I come too? Stay with Luke, honey, Martha said. Remember how we talked about hospitals being quiet places? Sarah followed as they wheeled Alfred into an exam room. The walls were pale green, with a single painting of a lighthouse. Her mom had told her once that they picked calm pictures for these rooms on purpose. Mr. Matthews, I'm going to check your blood pressure first, Dr. Chin explained, wrapping the cuff around Alfred's arm. Blood pressure's important, Alfred said clearly. Eleanor was a nurse. Your wife? Dr. Chin asked, watching the numbers. Mom was our nurse, Martha said softly. That's how they met. Dad was a patient, broken arm from a construction job. She had gentle hands, Alfred smiled. Then his face clouded. Where is Eleanor? Martha swallowed hard. Sarah saw her hand shake. Mr. Matthews, her mom, stepped in. Can you follow my finger with your eyes? Just like this. The examination continued. Blood pressure, temperature, reflexes, basic neurological tests. Sarah watched her mom work with Dr. Chun, anticipating what they needed, keeping Alfred calm with quiet words and gentle touches. Dehydrated, Dr. Chun murmured. We'll start some fluids. Any history of heart problems? No, Martha said. But the Alzheimer's diagnosis was about 2 years ago. It's getting worse. Sarah? Alfred called suddenly. Tell Martha about the trains. Tommy was telling us all about trains earlier, Sarah said. Remember? He knows so many kinds. Tommy. Alfred's forehead wrinkled. My grandson. He's 7. That's right, Daddy. Martha leaned forward. You remember. He likes the big ones. The freight trains. Dr. Chin made a note on his clipboard. These moments of clarity. How often do they happen? More when he's calm. When he's in familiar places with family. Martha's voice caught. At the facility, he gets so agitated. Keeps trying to leave, to find our old house or the library where I used to work. Used to? Sarah asked. I had to quit when Dad's condition got worse. Couldn't manage full-time work with the boys and taking care of him. Now I do part-time bookkeeping and some online tutoring, but a nurse came in with an 4 bag. Alfred tensed. It's okay, Sarah said quickly. It's just like when Grandma needed extra water. Remember how I told you about my grandma? She used to sing while they put the 4 in. Want me to sing? Alfred nodded. Sarah started the lullaby. She'd heard him humming earlier, making up words when she couldn't remember them. The nurse got the 4 in smoothly. You're good at this, Dr. Chin said to Sarah. Have you thought about becoming a doctor? She will be, Alfred said suddenly. Everyone stared at him. Smart girl. Helps people. Like Eleanor. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Her mom squeezed her shoulder. The facility called again, Martha said, checking her phone. They need to know. They're talking about transferring him to a more secure unit. No. Alfred tried to sit up. No more places. Want to go home? Daddy, please. I can't. I can't watch you all the time. The boys need me too. Sarah watched her mom's face change. That look she got when she was solving a problem. Mrs. Matthews, she said slowly. Have you considered in-home care? Even part-time? Can't afford it. The facility takes most of his Social Security, and my jobs barely cover our apartment and the boys' needs. There are programs. Mom hesitated. The hospital where I work is starting a new memory care pilot program. Home health aides, specialized nursing care, family support. They're looking for participants. That sounds expensive. It's grant-funded. They specifically want diverse cases, different backgrounds, family situations. And with your father's nursing connection, Alfred had started humming again, his eyes drooping as the fluids dripped steadily into his arm. I don't know. Martha twisted her hands together. Think about it, Mom said. I can get you the information. The pilot program even includes job placement assistance for family caregivers. Dr. Chun finished his notes. Mr. Matthews is stable. The dehydration wasn't severe. You found him in time. We'll finish this bag of fluids and run a few basic labs. Then he can go home, though we should discuss the facility situation. Home? Alfred opened his eyes. Eleanor? No, Daddy. Martha's voice broke. But maybe we can figure out a way for you to stay with us. Would you like that? Living with me and the boys? Tommy knows trains. Alfred smiled. Lucas has the blue one. Sarah watched Martha's face soften, saw hope replace worry in her tired eyes. Sarah, her mom said quietly, why don't we check on the boys? Let Dr. Chin talk to Mrs. Matthews about the program. In the waiting room, Tommy had fallen asleep against Luke, who was still clutching his blue engine. Did you mean it? Sarah asked her mom. About the pilot program? Every word. We've been looking for our first participants. Mr. Matthews would be perfect, his medical background, his family situation. She smiled. And someone else demonstrated excellent patient care skills today. Sarah thought about Alfred's words. Smart girl. Helps people. Like Eleanor. Mom, do you think I really could be a doctor someday? Her mom pulled her close. Baby, after what I saw today, you already have the most important qualities: compassion, quick thinking, staying calm under pressure. The rest is just studying. But the money, we'll figure it out. There are programs, scholarships. And now, she smiled. Now we have friends who understand the journey. Through the waiting room windows, Sarah could see the police cruiser still parked outside. Officers Martinez and Brooks keeping watch. She thought about Mr. Harrison, his gruff goodbye, about all the people who'd stopped to stare, and how some of them had put their phones away, chosen to help instead. Sometimes it just took one person choosing kindness to change everything. Martha emerged from the exam room, wiping her eyes, but smiling. Sarah, Dad's asking for you. Says he wants to make sure his doctor in training isn't leaving yet. Sarah stood up. Through the door, she could see Alfred in the hospital bed, frail but peaceful. Dr. Chun was adjusting the four. The lighthouse painting glowed softly on the wall. No, she said. I'm not leaving yet. She had promises to keep, to Alfred, to her grandmother's memory, to the little girl who dreamed of helping people. One step at a time, one kind choice at a time. That's how all journeys begin. The hospital coffee machine sputtered and gurgled, dispensing a stream of dark liquid into Martha's paper cup. The waiting room had emptied as the night wore on, leaving just their small group and the quiet beeping of distant monitors. Here, Patricia handed Martha a packet of sugar. Hospital coffee needs all the help it can get. Martha's hands shook slightly as she tore the packet. I should call the facility again. Let them know that we're looking at other options. I already spoke with them, Patricia said. Nurses authority. They know he's stable and with family. In the exam room, Sarah sat with Alfred and the boys. Tommy had spread out his train photos on the hospital bed tray, pointing out different engines while Luke dozed in a chair, still clutching blue engine. Southern Pacific 4449, Tommy explained seriously. It's a steam locomotive built in 1941. Alfred nodded, his eyes clearer than they'd been all evening. Big wheels. Lots of steam. Dr. Sarah, Luke mumbled sleepily. Is Pop better now? Sarah smiled at the new nickname. The medicine is helping. See how the bag is almost empty? That means he got all the water he needed. Dr. Chin appeared in the doorway, looking over Alfred's latest test results. Everything's coming back normal. No signs of injury or illness beyond the dehydration. Once this 4 is done, he's clear to go home. Home? Alfred looked around the room. Eleanor should be home soon. Her shift. Martha's coffee cup crumpled slightly in her grip. Patricia touched her arm. Mrs. Matthews, Dr. Chin said quietly. I've reviewed the pilot program information. Given your father's history and current situation, he would be an excellent candidate. We could start the enrollment process tonight. How? How quickly could it start? Initial assessment within 48 hours. Home health aid services could begin by next week. The program includes family support services, respite care, even job placement assistance for caregivers. Sarah watched Martha's face, saw the same look her mom got when weighing difficult decisions. The boys need stability, Martha said softly. And Dad, every time he's more confused, more scared, it's usually because he's in an unfamiliar place. The program is designed for exactly these situations, Patricia added. Keeping patients in familiar surroundings, with family, while providing professional support. Alfred had started humming again, his weathered fingers tapping the bed rail in time with his broken melody. Tommy hummed along, still arranging his train photos. What about the facility fees? Martha asked. We've paid through the month. The program can help negotiate that, Dr. Chen said. Part of the grant funding includes transition assistance. Sarah stood up, her legs stiff from sitting so long. I'm going to get some water. Would anyone else like some? I'll come with you. Tommy jumped up. Mom, can I get a snack too? Honey, it's so late. Martha checked her phone. Almost midnight. I know where the good vending machines are, Sarah offered. Mom always packs extra quarters for her night shifts. Patricia pulled some change from her scrub pocket. Get enough for everyone. We've all had a long day. Sarah led Tommy through the quiet hallways, their footsteps echoing on the linoleum. The boy practically bounced beside her, his trained pictures clutched in one hand. Are you really going to be a doctor? He asked. I want to be. It's expensive, though. Mom says important things are worth working for. Tommy selected a package of cookies from the vending machine. Like how she's working to take care of Pop Pop. Sarah thought about her mom's double shifts, the 2 small sneakers, the empty apartment. Yeah, important things are worth it. When they returned, Dr. Chun was removing Alfred's fur. Luke had crawled onto the bed, curled against his grandfather's side. Ready to go home, Mr. Alfreds? Sarah asked. Alfred blinked at her. The library. Martha works at the library. Not anymore, Daddy, Martha said gently. Remember? I'm going to stay home with you now. We'll get some help, and you can live with me and the boys. Tommy knows trains, Alfred smiled. Big wheels. Lots of steam. Officer Brooks appeared in the doorway, his partner behind him. Everything okay in here? All set, Dr. Chen said. Just finishing up the discharge paperwork. We can escort you home, Martinez offered. Make sure you get settled okay. Martha's eyes welled up again. You do that? You've already stayed so late. Part of the job, ma'am. Helping people get home safe. Sarah helped Alfred sit up while Martha gathered their things. Luke refused to wake up, so Martinez gently lifted him, blue engine and all. Sarah? Alfred called. Sarah comes too? It's really late, Daddy. Sarah and her mom need to go home and rest. But she'll visit, Patricia said quickly. Right, baby? While I'm meeting with Mrs. Matthews about the program, Sarah nodded. I'll visit Mr. Alfred. I promise. In the parking lot, the night air was cool and damp. Moths circled the streetlights, casting dancing shadows on the pavement. Follow us, Brooks said to Martha. We'll put the lights on. Make sure you get through the traffic okay. Tommy tugged Sarah's sleeve. Will you really come visit? I can show you my whole train collection. Definitely. Maybe you can teach me all the different kinds, like you taught Mr. Alfred. Sarah helps, Alfred said clearly. Like Eleanor helped? Martha hugged Sarah tight, then Patricia. I don't even know how to thank you both. Just take care of each other, Patricia said. That's all the thanks we need. They watched the small procession pull away. Police cruiser, Martha's van. Officer Martinez following in his car. The emergency room doors slid open and closed behind them, a constant rhythm like breathing. Ready to go home, babies? Patricia asked. It's way past your bedtime. Sarah thought about Alfred's words. Smart girl. Helps people. Mom, can we stop by the store tomorrow? I want to get something for Mr. Alfred. A picture of a train, maybe, for when he gets confused, so he remembers. Her mom smiled. Of course. And maybe we can look at those science books you wanted. Start working on that Dr. Dream. One step at a time. Sarah took her mom's hand. One step at a time. They walked to their car under the moth-circled lights. Somewhere in the city, a siren wailed. Not an ending, just another beginning. Another chance to help. Sarah thought about all the steps that had led to this moment. A sidewalk. A scared old man. A choice to stop, to stay, to care. Sometimes the biggest journeys started with the smallest steps. She was ready to take the next one. The bell above Harrison's general store door chimed as Sarah pushed it open. 1 week had passed since that night on the sidewalk. The morning sun caught the freshly cleaned windows. No more fingerprints or smudges where Alfred had leaned. Miss Johnson. Mr. Harrison looked up from restocking his shelf. His voice was different now, softer around the edges. Hi, Mr. Harrison. Do you have any picture frames? The small kind? He pointed toward the back. Arts and crafts aisle. Third shelf. Sarah held the train photograph carefully. She'd spent her allowance money on having it printed, a beautiful steam engine, black and silver against a blue sky. Tommy had helped her pick it out from a book at the library. Found what you need? Mr. Harrison appeared beside her as she studied the frames. I think this silver one. It matches the train. For the gentleman? The one from last week. Sarah nodded. Mr. Alfred. He's living with his daughter now. Sometimes he gets confused, but pictures help him remember. Mr. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Put that allowance money away, he said gruffly. This one's on the house. Really? Least I can do. He stared at the shelf, not meeting her eyes. I could have handled things better that day. The store phone rang. As Mr. Harrison walked away, Sarah heard him answer. Yes, we're wheelchair accessible. Of course your father is welcome here. She smiled, tucking the frame carefully into her backpack. The walk to Martha's apartment took 15 minutes. Sarah knew the route by heart now. She'd visited twice already this week while her mom helped set up the home care program. Tommy was waiting by the window. He yanked the door open before she could knock. Sarah, Pop's having a good day. He remembered what we had for breakfast. The apartment was small but bright, with train pictures covering most of one wall. Luke sat on the floor with his blue engine, running it along a track he'd built from blocks. Look who's here, Daddy, Martha called from the kitchen. Sarah came to visit. Alfred sat in his favorite armchair, by the window. His eyes were clear today, focused. Sarah helps, he said, smiling. Did you bring your doctor bag? It was their little joke now. Sarah swung her backpack around. Not today, but I brought something else. Tommy helped me pick it. She pulled out the framed photograph. Alfred's hands shook slightly as he took it. Southern Pacific, he said. Tommy knows all about it. 4,449, Tommy added proudly. Built in 1941. Pop remembered that yesterday. Martha appeared with a tray of cookies and juice. Her hair was tied back neatly, her clothes fresh, different from the exhausted woman Sarah had met that first night. The home health aide comes in an hour, she said. But Dad's been great today. Even helped with the dishes. Eleanor taught me. Alfred nodded. Then his face clouded. Where is Eleanor? She's resting, Daddy. Remember? We talked about how Mom is resting now. Sarah watched Martha handle the confusion. Gentle words, no corrections, just redirecting with love. The same way her own mom had handled Grandma's hard days. I made you something else, Mr. Alfred. Sarah pulled out a small photo album. Tommy helped with this too. Inside were pictures of trains, carefully labeled in Sarah's neat handwriting. Steam engines, freight cars, passenger trains, all the kinds Tommy had taught her about. Look, Daddy, Martha said softly. Your very own train book. Alfred's fingers traced the pages. Big wheels, he murmured. Lots of steam. Luke abandoned his block track and climbed onto the arm of Alfred's chair. Read it to me, Pop. The home care nurse brought some memory games yesterday, Martha told Sarah. Dad loves the matching cards. And having set routines helps. Breakfast at 8, walks in the afternoon, train pictures with the boys. Mom says routine is really important. Like how hospitals have schedules for everything. Speaking of your mom, the hospital called this morning. They're offering me a part-time position in the billing department. Hours while the boys are at school. And I can work from home when needed. Sarah grinned. That's great. It's because of you both, Martha said quietly. If you hadn't stopped that day, if your mom hadn't known about the program, a knock at the door interrupted her. The home health aide, a cheerful woman named Rosa, entered with her supply bag. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Matthews, ready for our exercises? Alfred looked up from the photo album. Sarah helps with exercises. Of course she can help, Rosa smiled. I hear she's training to be a doctor. Tommy bounced on his toes. Can I help too? Me too. Luke waved his blue engine. The more the merrier, Rosa said, pulling out elastic exercise bands. Mr. Matthews does better with family around. Sarah watched as they arranged chairs in a circle. Alfred kept the train album on his lap, one hand resting on it like an anchor to the present moment. Martha touched Sarah's arm. Stay for lunch? The boys made sandwiches. Thanks, but I promised Mom I'd meet her at the hospital. She's showing me around the pediatric ward today. Future Dr. Johnson. Martha smiled. Dad was right about you. Alfred looked up at his name. Sarah helps, he said clearly. Smart girl. Like Eleanor. That's right, Daddy. Sarah's smart like Mom was. Want to show her the new exercises Rosa taught us? The morning sun filled the small living room, warming the train pictures on the wall. Luke hummed his made-up tune, while Tommy demonstrated the proper way to hold the exercise bands. Sarah thought about Mr. Harrison's changed voice, the wheelchair access sign she'd spotted by his door. About her mom's proud smile when she'd asked for the medical dictionary. About Martha's shoulders, straighter now, no longer carrying the weight alone. Small changes, small kindnesses, adding up day by day. Ready, Dr. Sarah? Rosa held out an exercise band. Sarah dropped her backpack and joined the circle. Alfred beamed at her, his hands steady on the blue elastic. Sometimes helping meant big moments, life-changing choices on dark sidewalks. Sometimes it meant smaller things, picture frames and train photos and 15 minutes of morning exercises. Both kinds of help mattered. Ready, Sarah said, and took her place in the circle of care they'd built together. Sarah's sneakers squeaked on the hospital floor, new ones that actually fit, bought with her mom's first bonus from the memory care program. The pediatric ward walls were painted with cartoon animals, their colors bright under the fluorescent lights. There's my future colleague. Dr. Chin smiled as she passed the nurse's station. Here for the grand rounds? Mom's showing me her new department. Sarah straightened her visitor badge proudly. She says the memory care program is growing. 27 families now, he confirmed. Your friend Mr. Matthews was just the beginning. They'd moved the program to its own wing last month. Sarah had watched it grow from her mom's excited phone calls and late-night paperwork sessions at their kitchen table. The elevator dinged. Patricia Johnson stepped out, her scrubs now bearing the program's logo, a house surrounded by helping hands. Ready for the tour, baby? We just got the new family room set up. The room was warm and welcoming, with comfortable chairs and shelves of books. A familiar face looked up from a puzzle table. Tommy? Sarah blinked. What are you doing here? The boy grinned, pieces of a train puzzle scattered before him. Mom's at her training. She's going to help other families figure out the paperwork and stuff like how Mrs. Johnson helped us. Martha's voice carried from down the hall. Remember, the insurance codes need to match exactly. She's a natural, Patricia said quietly. Already helped 3 families navigate the enrollment process. Where's Mr. Alfred? Sarah looked around. Pop-pops with Luke and Rosa at the park, Tommy said. He likes the benches by the duck pond. Says the sound of water helps him think. Sarah remembered her grandmother saying something similar. How certain places, certain sounds could cut through the fog in her mind. Oh! Tommy jumped up. Did you tell Sarah about Mr. Harrison? Patricia smiled. Not yet. Why don't you show her? Tommy led them down the hall to a newly painted room. A plaque by the door read Harrison Community Resource Center. No way, Sarah breathed. Way, Tommy nodded. He came to visit Pop last week. Said he wanted to help make things right. Now he's donating part of his store's profits to the program. The room held computers, printers, and a wall of information pamphlets. A corner was set up with children's books and toys, including a familiar blue train engine. Luke left his engine? Sarah asked, surprised. He has 2 now, Tommy explained. Mr. Harrison got him a new one. Said this one should stay here to help other kids when their grandpas or grandmas are confused. Sarah picked up Blue Engine, its fabric worn soft with love. She thought about that first night, Luke offering his precious toy to comfort his grandfather. Martha appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Sarah, perfect timing. Dad's been asking when you'd visit again. How's he doing? Better than we ever hoped. Martha's eyes were bright. The routine helps so much. Morning exercises with Rosa, Afternoon walks, train pictures with the boys. He still has hard days, but she gestured around the resource center. Now we have help. Real help. The program's expanding to 3 more hospitals next month, Patricia added. Martha's going to help train the new family advocates. Sarah ran her finger along Blue Engine's scratched smokestack. Do you think Grandma would have liked this? Her mom pulled her close. Baby, she would have loved it. And she'd be so proud of how you started it all. I didn't start it, Sarah protested. I just stopped when everyone else walked by, Martha finished. Sometimes that's all it takes. Tommy had returned to his puzzle. The piece he held showed part of a steam engine. Number 4449, Sarah recognized now. Mr. Harrison's adding a train section to his store, he said proudly. Pop's going to help pick out the models when he has good days. A nurse poked her head in. Mrs. Matthews? The new family is here for orientation. Coming. Martha straightened her name badge, Family Advocate, in neat letters. Sarah, we're having dinner at 6 if you and your mom want to join. Dad would love to show you his new memory book. The one with the hospital photos? Tommy asked. He remembers all the nurses' names now. Sarah looked at her mom, who nodded. We'll bring dessert. They watched Martha head down the hall, her stride confident as she greeted the anxious-looking couple by the elevators. Dr. Chin says the program might add a youth volunteer component, Patricia said casually. For students interested in medical careers, Sarah's heart jumped. Really? Might look good on a college application someday. College is expensive, Sarah said automatically, but without the old weight of impossibility. We'll figure it out. Between the program bonus and my new position, her mom smiled. Dreams have a way of working out when you help other people chase theirs. Tommy called from the puzzle table. Sarah, I need help with the smokestack part. She sat down beside him, sorting through the pieces. Through the window, she could see the hospital parking lot where they'd said goodbye to Alfred that first night. The same spot where she'd first dared to voice her dream of becoming a doctor. Found it. Tommy held up a puzzle piece triumphantly. Sarah helped him fit it into place. The train engine took shape piece by piece, just like the program had grown person by person, choice by choice. Small steps, big changes. Sarah? Tommy handed her another piece. Mom says when I grow up, I can help with the trains at Mr. Harrison's store. What do you want to do when you grow up? She thought about Dr. Chin's smile, about Martha's confident stride, about her mom's gentle hands calming Alfred in the emergency room. I want to help people, she said. Like we help your Pop? You already do, Tommy said matter-of-factly, fitting another piece into place. Outside, the afternoon sun caught the program's logo on the building wall. The house, the helping hands, the promise of care reaching out to all who needed it. Sarah Johnson, 12 next month, with new sneakers and growing dreams, smiled at her friend's simple truth. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest hearts. One piece at a time, one choice at a time, one life touching another until the whole picture changed. The autumn wind scattered leaves across Mason Street as Sarah walked her familiar route home from school. 6 months had passed since that life-changing evening. The sidewalk outside Harrison's General Store was swept clean, and a new sign hung in the window, proud supporter of the Boston Memory Care Alliance. The bell chimed as she pushed open the door. The store had changed. Wider aisles now, with gentle lighting and clear signs. A new section in the back displayed model trains, the centerpiece a perfect replica of Southern Pacific 4449. Right on time, Mr. Harrison called from behind the counter. Your mother's supplies are ready. He lifted a box of medical reference books onto the counter. Program materials for the new hospital expansion. Tell her I added some extra patient journals. The family seemed to like those. Thanks, Mr. Harrison. Sarah shifted her backpack. Is Mr. Alfred coming today? Thursday afternoon train club, he nodded. Martha's bringing him and the boys after their park walk. Rosa too, if she's not too busy with the new clients. The train club had started small, just Alfred and Tommy sharing pictures in a quiet corner of the store. Now it filled the back room every Thursday, families from the program bringing their loved ones to share stories and memories. The bell chimed again. Luke burst in, Blue Engine clutched in one hand, its twin in the other. Sarah, look what Pop remembered. Alfred followed more slowly, Rosa and Martha on either side. His steps were steady today, his eyes clear. Southern Pacific 4449, he said, pointing to the model in the display. Built in 1941. Tommy taught me. That's right, Mr. Alfred. Sarah grinned. Speaking of Tommy, where is he? Library program, Martha explained. He's reading train stories to the younger kids in the memory care families. Says it helps them understand what's happening with their grandparents. Mr. Harrison emerged from behind the counter with a chair for Alfred. The old animosity had melted into something like friendship, built on shared commitment to the program's growth. Sarah. Alfred took her hand, his grip firm. Doctor visit today? Just dropped off my volunteer application. Mom says they're starting the youth program next month. Smart girl, he nodded. Helps people. Eleanor would like you. Martha didn't flinch at her mother's name anymore. The hard days still came, but they'd learned to ride them out together. Family, friends, and a community that no longer looked away. Mrs. Johnson called. Rosa said, adjusting Alfred's jacket. The State Review Board approved funding for 5 more program sites. They're using Boston's model. Sarah thought about all the other families out there, scared, alone, wondering how to keep their loved ones safe. She thought about all the other children watching their grandparents slip away. Now they'd have help. Now they'd have hope. The store door opened again. Tommy rushed in, still wearing his library volunteer badge. Sarah, Mom, you'll never guess what happened. He could barely contain his excitement. The library wants to start a regular reading program for memory care families. They asked me to help. That's wonderful, honey. Martha hugged him. Dad, did you hear that? Tommy's going to read at the library, just like I used to. Tommy knows trains, Alfred said proudly. Teaches everyone. Luke had set up his 2 engines on the counter, running them in parallel tracks. This one's for helping, he explained seriously, pointing to the original blue engine. And this one's for home. Sarah watched Mr. Harrison carefully wrap the program materials. His hands, once clenched in anger at a confused old man, now moved with purpose. Helping, supporting, making amends. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. State funding approved. Starting interviews for new family advocates next week. Martha's leading the training team. Dreams do come true. Love you. Sarah thought about dreams, her mother's, Martha's, her own, about how they'd all shifted and grown, made stronger by sharing them. Time for exercises, Rosa announced. Who's joining us today? Me. Luke abandoned his trains. I'll help, Sarah offered. It was their routine now. Exercises, memory games, quiet conversations that anchored Alfred to the present moment. Mr. Harrison cleared a space between the aisles. Use the back room, he said. More space there. I'll keep an eye on the trains. They formed their familiar circle. Alfred, Rosa, Luke with his engines, Sarah with her growing knowledge of memory care techniques. Martha watched from the doorway, her advocate badge catching the afternoon light. Sarah helps, Alfred said, taking his place in the circle. His voice was strong today, full of recognition. Everyone helps now. Sarah thought about that first night on the sidewalk, about choices and changes and the ripple effects of small kindnesses. She thought about her grandmother, about all the other grandparents out there, about the families learning to love through the fog of forgetting. The autumn sun slanted through Harrison's clean windows, warming the space where fear had once lived. Outside, leaves danced on the sidewalk where a scared girl had made a choice to stop, to stay, to care. Ready, everyone? Rosa held out the exercise bands. Sarah took her place in the circle, surrounded by the family she'd found and the community they'd built together. Sometimes love looked like a girl in scuffed sneakers, choosing kindness on a dark sidewalk. Sometimes it looked like this, a circle of care in a transformed store, a program growing beyond borders, hearts opening one by one to the possibility of help. Ready, Sarah said, and smiled at the faces around her. Alfred with his clear eyes, Luke with his twin engines, Martha with her advocate's heart, Rosa with her gentle hands, Mr. Harrison watching proudly from the doorway. This was how change happened. This was how healing began. One choice at a time, one person at a time, one circle of care growing ever wider, until everyone who needed help could find their way home. Sarah Johnson, future doctor, daughter of Patricia, friend of Alfred, took her place in the circle and began.